Good evening, everybody. Today is day 65 of our Sutta discussions, especially Monday Sutta discussions. And today's talk going to be on what are the three ways for eliminating personal suffering. According to the Loka Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 3.23. Kosala Samyutta. 3 means Kosala Samyutta and 23rd Sutta. Now, before I move on to the Sutta, I want to explain to you what is personal suffering. Now, in the Buddhist teachings, when you study Buddhist teachings, you may perhaps study that suffering is twofold, and there is no one particular way that you can find some Pali equivalents, but you could see personal suffering, we call it santanagata dukkha, and social suffering, samajagata dukkha. Now, basically, suffering or dukkha that we all experience internally is santanagata dukkha, and the dukkha we see in the society and the world as a whole is samajagata dukkha. But it's not that much explained in many places, but we normally figure out these two parts of suffering. So the sutta called Loka Sutta that we're going to be talking today talks about how we can get rid of the personal suffering. So that's very interesting. But then someone who could read the sutta before this discussion may wonder how I'm going to talk about personal suffering with regard to the Loka Sutta, because in the Loka Sutta there is no mention about the suffering, dukkha. But I will tell you why I talk about personal suffering with regard to the Loka Sutta. Now, can you remember a discussion, the Sutta discussion I did back in February this year? Could you remember the sutta's name? Rohitassa Sutta. This sutta comes in Anguttara Nikaya. This sutta is very interesting because this Rohitassa Sutta explains the real world. The deity, the deva called Rohitassa, appears in front of the Buddha, and then he was explaining to the Buddha, being as a sage before the Buddha, long before he became a deva, he was a skywalker. He was a tapasa. We would call him as a sage who could skywalk at that time with the samapattis, with the absorptions. And then what happened? He wanted to experience the end of the world. So then what he did was, because he could skywalk, he sort of thought to skywalk from one end to the other end of the universe, or I would say the world. And then what happened? Even though his talent of skywalking is as marvelous as we can see in the sutta, and when he making his steps, we know that. So he steps from the Western Ocean to the Eastern Ocean. So you think about, like, when you're traveling from one end of this world to the other end, even in this world, it could take 15, 17, 18 hours of time, even you fly by a plane. So but this particular sage called Rohitassa, he could skywalk. His steps are mentioned like he was trying to put one step from Eastern Ocean to the Western Ocean. I would say we can take this way. maybe from Pacific to I would say from Pacific, both are Pacific to Atlantic. I don't know. I mean, we had to think about that way. Maybe much bigger than that. But what happened on his journey to finding the end of the world, he got tired. He could not come to the end of the world, and then Buddha said, trying to find the end of the world is useless, is futile. The real world is inside of us, inside of everybody of us, every being. So we have to find out the end of that world. That is called this whole body. Within this body, Buddha says to the Rohitasa, Deva Rohitasa, I would say Dukkha Arya Satcha, called the first noble truth. Dukkha Samudaya Arya Satcha, the cause of the noble truth called this is Dukkha, and then the third noble truth called the cessation of the Dukkha, and the fourth noble truth, the path which leads to the cessation of the Dukkha. So all these are, I would say, Buddha say, I would say all these truths are inside of you. It's do not look for the end of the world from outside of you. All these truths are inside of you. You need to uncloud you from those types of ignorances. So then you will find out the truth. So that's why I use this Loka, the usage of Loka with the personal suffering. So if you can take a look at of the personal suffering, you understand that it is within you. You could see the personal suffering. It's not about an external world. Perhaps you might think that because of the external things, things trigger inside of you. It's true, but even though they trigger inside of you, let's say someone of your family might pass away all of a sudden, and you think that your whole world collapses, right? And then someone of you who you with so much intimately, and then that person is trying to break up with you, right? And then so this what you call bereavement, I would say, separation, right? And frustrations, all these things happen from within, and maybe the external factors can trigger, they can sort of like lead you to become so, but they all happen within you. So that's why I would like to understand Loka from this internal Loka perspective. So in the Buddhist teachings, Buddha says the real world is not the world that you see, the continents and the countries. The real world is within you. It lies within you. That's very interesting. That's why I was trying to say that we can find out 3 ways to eliminate the personal suffering that lies within our world, which you call the real world inside of us. That's why I use the word called personal suffering in English into this Loka concept. So Loka concept basically means not the cosmology, it's inside of it. It's you and inside of you. So you will never find out 4 noble truths from a forest, from a temple, from a retreat. You will only find out inside of you if you awaken yourself. There is what we find out by noble truths, 4 noble truths, and then the liberation, or what you call so-called soteriological things, liberation. Let's take a look at the sutta now. The sutta's name is Loka Sutta, Savattham. The story happens in Savatthi, the capital city of Kosala state. I was looking at an erroneous reference of this Rohitasa Sutta. I guess this comes from Samyutta Nikaya, and I think some of the explanations in some places could be wrong. So I would ask you to read Rohitasa Sutta, not from Anguttara Nikaya. I think it should be in Samyutta Nikaya. With that in mind, let's go into the sutta. Eka mantang nesinno ko raja pasenadi kosalo bhagavantang etada bocha. This is normally the background story, and then what happens is, seated to one side, King Pasenadi said to the Buddha, Kati nukho bhante lokasa dhamma uppajjamana uppajjanti ahitaya dukkhaya abhasu viharayati. It's pretty interesting to understand what the king is asking from the Buddha. So how many things arise in the world for its harm, suffering, and discomfort? Now, take a look at these three Pali words specifically. They speak eloquently the aftermath of these three things that cause personal suffering: ahitaya, harm; dukkhaya, suffering; apasu viharayati, discomfort. So I would say, what are the three? I could also say, what are the three ways for eliminating? The reason is that everybody knows the Pali word called dukkha. So I would use dukkha, but it is in line with ahita, dukkha, apasu vihara. So how many things arise in the world for its harm, suffering, and discomfort? Now you need to think about that. This world is not this cosmological world. It's the real world that exists within all of us, in you, including me. Now, I also would like to tell you, because I'm going into the three ways after this, so I would then explain to you more about what is Loka. Now, there are a couple other suttas called Loka, especially in the same Samyutta Nikaya. There's one sutta called Loka Sutta, again the same name, SN 12 and 44. Samyutta, the sutta that comes in other Samyutta, far from this Samyutta. In that sutta it says, what's the origination of the world? What's the cessation of the world? Now, take a look. I mean, this world is not this cosmological world. This world is this world, what you call internal world. Especially this is the real world that we have. This world exists within you. And Buddha speaks about origination of this internal world and also the cessation. How does Buddha talk about that? Buddha says the same thing. Chakkuncha paticca rupecha uppajjati chakku viññānaṁ tinnaṁ sangati passo pasapacchaya vedana vedana paccaya tanha tanha paccaya upadana upadana paccaya bhavu bhava paccaya jati jati paccaya jara maranam sokparadeva dukkha dobana supayasa. So this is how he explains the origination of the internal world suffering, this particular so-called internal world. How does the internal world start? Because we all carry our senses, called chakku, eyes; sota, ears; ghana, called nose; juha, tongue; kaya, body; and mana, called mind. So then because we all carry these 6 senses, then we take the respective objects of the particular sense. Let's say images to the ears, images to the eyes, sounds to the ears, and then smell to nose, taste to tongue, contact to the body, thought to the mind. So because we carry these senses, so the senses take the objects, respective objects of the senses. And then what happens? Does the process stop at the object, taking object level? No, it further goes on to different levels. Then what happens? Because of the amalgamation or meeting of these senses and the objects, then what happened? there is a particular consciousness arises. Let's say because of the eyes and the images, then what happens? There is this eye consciousness arises, right? And then what happens? Now the same way it applies to all the other senses too. Let's say because of the ears and the sound, then there arises ear consciousness. Because of the nose and the smell, there arises the nose consciousness. So in the same way, you can understand the rest. But then what happens? Does the process stop at rising of the consciousness? No, it continues. And what happens? Now we know sense, and then what happened? The object and the particular consciousness, and then what happens? Because of the amalgamation of these three, sense, object, and particular consciousness, and there gonna be a contact, particular contact. Now some people call it in Abhidhamma, this is Chakku Sampassa, Sota Sampassa. I mean, that's a different conversation. So, and then what happened? Because of the contact, there arises a sensation, a feeling. Pasapaccha Vedana. Because of this feeling, Vedana Paccha Tanha. Then there arises craving, and then craving leads to grasping, called Upadana, and then grasping leads to bhava, existence, or becoming, and not stopping in the samsara. And then what happens? It leads to all the other small and large scale of suffering, called dukkha, suffering, domanassa, I would say physical pain, and domanassa, mental pain, upayasa, despair, and etc., etc. So now you understand this internal world, what you call real world that I said by internal world. How does the internal world originate? It originates from the senses, and then it will take you to the suffering from internal senses. But the thing is that if you can take care of your senses, and there will be no issue, and you are good. But the problem is a lot of people can't take care of their senses, so that they are into a lot of sufferings. So now you know how does the internal world, I would say the real world, originate. And how does the real world cease? There is a certain way how to cease it. So you can't stop your senses taking the objects, right? You can't stop it unless you can bring your senses in a positive direction. But let's say if you take a positive object with your senses, and then what happens? There arises the consciousness, and then what happened? At the level of not the contact, at the level of feeling, you understand that I'm not trying to take it in an unwholesome way, right? Probably you are not too much happy, not too much worried. Probably you are neutral about your feeling and the happiness or the unhappiness of the feeling. You are neutral, rather trying to say I'm very much into this, I'm not very much into this, but I'm rather neutral with my feeling, so that you can try to find out the cessation of your your feeling, and it will not take you to the rest of the suffering after that. So you could do something with that. So that's when you understand the feeling and what to do with the feeling, right? So anyway, so this is the cessation of the world. So because you are not letting the process of becoming go as it needs, as it wants. You are trying to consciously and positively transform that process into a wholesome journey, so that it will not take you to suffering. So that's called Loka Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya. It's not this sutta, it's another sutta. I'm trying to show you that Loka has been used to talk about the internal world that exists within all of us. Another sutta by Loka, it also goes by Loka. In that sutta, Buddha further talks about what is real Loka. It's same thing but in different ways. Loko lokoti bhante vuchyati kittavatanuko bhante lokoti. Now, the someone is asking from the Buddha, Loka. People talk about Loka. And what is the real world? Lujjatiko bhikkhu tasma lokoti bucchati kincha lujjati chakkun ma chakkunko bhikkhu lujjati rupa lujjanti chakku viññānaṁ lujjati chakku sampasso lujjati yampidam chakku sampassa paccaya uppajjati vedaitam sukham va dukkhaṁ va adukkama sukham va tampi lujjati. What is lujjati? Disintegrates. So it's not, there's no integration, integrity. So when you understand your senses and the objects of the respective senses and the consciousnesses of the particular senses and the particular contacts of the particular senses, when you understand that, also the feeling of the particular senses, when you understand that they disintegrate, they break apart at a certain point, and then you understand the real world. So in the real world, you understand that this whole process of senses and objects, consciousness types, and the contact, feeling, when you understand that all these are subject to changes and break apart, then you specifically understand that's the real world. So this real world is not the cosmological real world you see, and that is what Buddha says to the Rohitasa, that the real world is not the cosmological world that someone can travel by skywalking. Okay, now I'm trying to discuss the three things or three ways in eliminating this whole suffering that we can feel within us, that means within our world, lokas. What are they? Let's take a look at the text. Tayoko Maharaja Lokasa Dhamma Uppajjamana Uppajjanti Ahitaya Dukkhaya Apasu Viharaya. Now Buddha says, great king, three things arise in the world for its harm, suffering, and discomfort. Now, you don't need to be confused about what Buddha says by the world. Great king, three things arise in the world. In the world means inside of us, right? Not outside in the cosmological world. So there are three things that happen, that arise inside of us for our harm, our suffering, and discomfort. Katame tayo. What three? Loboko Maharaja Lokasa Dhammo Uppajjamano Uppajjati Ahitaya Dukkhaya Apasu Viharaya. Dosoko Maharaja Lokasa Dhammo Uppajjamano Uppajjati Ahitaya Dukkhaya Apasu Viharaya. Mohoko Maharaja Lokasa Dhammo Uppajjamano Uppajjati Ahitaya Dukkhaya Apasu Viharaya. Imeko Maharaja Tayo Lokasa Dhamma Uppajjamana Uppajjanti Ahitaya Dukkhaya Apasu Viharaya. What are they? What three? Greed, that means lobha, hate, dosa, and delusion, moha. These three things arise in the world, what you call the real internal world of everybody of us, in every being, for its harm, suffering, and discomfort. So, lobha, dosa, moha. Now, we have some issues in understanding the words that I use for translations, right? What is lobha, what is dosa, what is moha, but we will talk about them later. And then what happened? Lobo dosocha mohocha purisang papacetasa hinsanti atta sambhuta tacha sarangva sampalanti. Now Buddha brings a sort of a simile to say that how it happens. When greed, hate, and delusion have arisen inside oneself. Now see, when the greed, hatred, and delusion arise in one's internal world, then what happens? They harm a person of wicked heart as a reed is destroyed by its own fruit, right? So it's like a reed is destroyed by its own fruit. Now the fruit, now the fruits grow because of the reed, but at the end, what happens? Reed is destroyed by the fruit. This can happen. So I would say this internal world created us, and then because of the internal world, we will, you know, be vulnerable to the suffering. Now, I would like to talk about this particular three things that we need to eliminate. Now, all of you know what they are, right? Loka, Dosa, Moha. But the problem is, we have to take a look at of these three from a larger, broader perspective. Now, I would like to take you to Abhidhamma. Now, you know, in the Abhidhamma, there are four main teachings in Abhidhamma: Chitta, Cetasika, Rupa, Nibbana. Under Cetasika, we know there are 52 Cetasikas, we call mental factors, wherein which we understand the real nature, true nature of the kusalas and akusalas. And you know that Loka, Dosa, Moha are usually taken as the three akusala roots. And the opposite is the kusala roots, what they are, alobha, adosa, amoha. Now, in short, I would say, if you can eliminate, if you can get rid of lobha, dosa, moha as much as you can, maybe you might not be able to, totally eliminate, but at least if you can sort of get rid of them, at least temporarily, at least for short time, because maybe if you sort of eliminate them, you sort of at least not letting them sort of like grow inside of you, then after some time you again try to do the same effort. You are not trying to let them grow inside of you. So it will take you to comfort, it will take you to not suffering, it will take you to comfort, not to discomfort, right? So in order to understand the three akusala roots and the three kusala roots, we need to go into Cetasikas. Now in the Cetasikas, we know there are 14 akusala Cetasikas, mental factors. We know it says that there are 4 fundamental causative akusala factors that lead to other akusalas. The first thing is moha. Now, in this list of 3 akusala roots, we know that someone can be into lobha and dosa because of moha. So moha is the fundamental problem. Because of the moha, one can be greedy, one can be angry, one can be into dosa. So basically lobha, dosa come from moha. But dosa looks like it's more dangerous than lobha, because we can sort of analyze this way. Someone can be greedy, but if that person can take care of oneself at the level of lobha, so then there will be no issues with anger or hatred. But unfortunately, a lot of people, when a lot of people getting greedy, when they become greedy, they sort of try to be angry at other people, maybe people who are surrounding. So they think that they should go into hatred, maybe unintentionally. That's a big problem. I'm not saying lobha is good, but at least people can stop at greed, rather developing, letting it continue to dosa. You are really good. But if you let it go to dosa, and we never know what's going to happen. You may that would be the place where people do a lot of bad things. Hatred. Now think about in today's world, hatred. If people can stop at least, because moha is a big problem, right? Because of moha we are in the samsara. But lobha if you can stop at lobha, at least at lobha, greed, then you are actually taking care of you, protecting you much better than you think. Because a lot of people never know the sort of like extents, contents, or the different influences of different akusala roots. So I would say moha is the fundamental reason of our bad doings, akusalas. So moha arises everywhere, but then what happens? People are motivated to do greed, stick to greed, and then dosa. But if people can stop at greed and not continue to dosa, that would be a very good thing. And then slowly they can also get rid of lobha too. But anyways, in the Abhidhamma it says moha is one of the fundamental reasons of why people, I think it's the main fundamental reason why people are into akusalas. Now we know in the Mahayana teachings, we know that they separate avidya and moha differently. Now they say avidya is ignorance and moha is delusion. So there are two contexts. So I would say to Mahayana, they say moha is a sub part of this big ignorance, I would say avijja. But in the Theravada teachings, we don't find that different. We just use the both as synonymous, as being synonymous. So anyways, I would say moha, ignorance or delusion, or I would say confusion, is the main reason why we are into akusala. So if you can stay mindful, at least you understand that this is a bad thing. Your mentality, your perspective comes from amoha, it's called panya. So the opposite of moha is panya, right? So if you at least can summon your wisdom, bring your wisdom towards any situation that can happen, you can do that by being mindful, right? So when you are mindful, you know that I need to be wise, so that you are not trying to be ignorant, you are not trying to be delusional. And you also know that the opposite of dosa is metta, practice metta, and the opposite of greed is dana, right? So I would say alobha dosa moha means, in your simple understanding, it is dana, metta and panya. So if you can continue your works, spiritual works, particularly with dana, metta and panya, and you are not susceptible to any akusalas, right? So I will talk about that in little more details at the end of the talk. So anyways, so moha is the main reason why people are into akusalas. Then ahirika. Ahirika is moral, I would say moral shame. So now here ahirika means not having moral shame. So one of the reasons why people are into akusala is we first talked about the ignorance and or delusion, and then here not having moral shame. Anuttappa means not having moral fear. Now the first one is ahirika is moral shame. Anuttappa is not having moral fear. Now these two are called as deva dharmas. Actually, if you have a moral fear and moral shame towards any activity, then you are sort of making sure that you are protecting yourself from akusalas, right? Hiri ottappa, as we say in the best part of the positive parts of the akusala, ahirika and anuttappa. And uddacha is restlessness of your mind. So moha means ignorance or delusion. Ahirika is not being morally shameful. Anuttappa is not being morally fearful. And uddacha is not restlessness. So these four mental factors are the main reasons for why someone is into akusalas. And then it separates some the basic akusalas from under the lobha and dosa, because moha is the main thing. So moha is taken out, and then lobha and dosa. Under Loba, we need to understand the Loba comes in different ways, especially these three: Loba, Ditti, and Mana. So Mana is one of the ways why people are into greed. What is Mana? Mana is measuring, sizing up. Now in today's world, we talk about racism. Now people are very much into racism in some countries. If you can take a look at the Buddhist analysis of Buddhist point of view of racism, we know how does someone come up with a racism thought or racist thought. It is pretty much because they compare themselves, those of the people, right? So if you don't compare yourself to others, rather thinking that everybody should be deserved love, compassion, everything, without these all petty understandings, unnecessary understandings, then you will not be into any such ideas of prejudice, right? So racism comes from Mana and Ditti. Mana leads to Ditti as well. Ditti is views. So people in today's world have a lot of views: political views, religious views, many views. And Buddha says they all come under Loba. That means when you are a person who has a lot of measuring about, comparing nature to other people, then you have a lot of greed. When you have a lot of views and you are struggling with your views with other people, then you have a lot of greed. So that means Ditti and Mana, viewing and I would say views and then measuring, they come under Loba. So they are rooted in Loba. That's the best way of saying. Under Dosa there are four: Kukkucca, Maccariya, Issa, and Dosa. Kukkucca is remorse. Any type of remorse is rooted in the Dosa. Maccariya is stinginess. Now you understand that Maccariya has not been taken with Loba. Maccariya is stinginess. And greed and stinginess has a difference. The difference is that in Maccariya you don't like, that particular person doesn't like other person enjoy what is been given. So it's a dosa, under anger, under hate. And Issa is jealousy. Jealousy also is rooted in the dosa, right? So now you understand that Loba and dosa has an extensive, extensive nature of other akusalas. So rather you understand there are three akusala roots. I suggest you to understand the subordinate akusalas inside of the Loba and Dosa, because Moha is pretty clear, right? Moha is ignorance. But if you understand that Ditti and Mana, views and measuring, comes under Loba, as well as Issa, Maccariya, Kukkucca, jealousy, stinginess, and remorse or regret come under Dosa, you will be having a good chance, opportunity to protect yourself from Loba and Dosa. So now, if you understand the Moha to be the fundamental reason of why you might execute bad actions, bad thoughts, bad words, then you should work on Moha. How you can work on Moha? By becoming a wise person. And because I will be talking with Professor Karivasam about Panya this Wednesday. I'm not talking a lot of things about Panya, but basically I would say, if you work on mindfulness so that you will be able to practice wisdom, then that will be the best way to take care of your Moha, because then you understand how to understand Moha and how to practice wisdom, more wisdom, how to stay wise, and not even how to stay wise, how I can maintain my wisdom, how I can be a person of wisdom all the time until I attain Nibbana. And what's the treatment for dosa? Metta. You can practice metta, not just as a meditation by sitting. You can do that too, but your mentality should be metta all the time, loving kindness at all times. If you can look at Metta Sutta, you know that Buddha says, Tittang charang nisinnova sayanova Yavatassa vikatamiddho etang satin aditteya brahma metang viharan idamahu. So Buddha says the greatest mentality that one can cultivate is metta, loving kindness. So the greatest mentality. So how can one practice this greatest mentality? Every time, every posture. Tittang, when that person stands up. Charang, that person walks. I would say when we stand up, when we walk. Nisinnova, sayanova, when we sit, and when we lie down. Yavatassa vikatamitto, as long as we are awake, we need to practice his greatest mentality. So that means the best way to practice adosa is metta. And then what about lobha? And a lot of people talk about lobha. There are a lot of greedy people, but they don't talk about dana that much. I always say, why we always talk about the negative aspects of the the dhammas, I would say the akusalas. Why don't we create a positive dialogue about the good things? At least people become influenced. Rather we talk about lobadosa moha. Why don't we talk about dana, metta and panya? So people at least know what to do and what could be the process to become a better person. I think if we talk about dana all the time, if we talk about loving kindness all the time, metta, if we talk about wisdom all the time, I think there will be a certain change, sure change that can happen in many. So I would say the three ways how you can get rid of your personal suffering is practice dana. Okay, practice dana at different levels. Be that a monk, be that a nun, a monastic, be that a person who needs support. Try to find out your generosity in different perspectives. Don't just limit yourself to one place. There are a lot of people who need your support. The only thing is that you may never know who they are. And then second is try to practice loving kindness from within you. Don't think that you need to sit down and practice. That will be the only thing. You can do that too. But try to compassionately, try to kindfully, try to lovingly look at the whole world, the suffering of the whole world. How can you help? And what can I do to change this whole world? So I would say if you bring this loving kindness mentality to all the issues, I think people don't argue with each other. People don't fight each other. People don't try to conflict each other. So there will be more positivities. There will be more conflict resolutions rather the mere conflicts. So that's why I urge you to think about practice metta in a way you feel that you practice metta, this loving kindness mentality. Not just saying that may I be well, happy and peaceful, and you are not bringing the full nature, this inclusive, full nature of loving kindness. You need to apply loving kindness to your thoughts, to your words, to your actions. When you talk to someone, talk with loving kindness. When you act, when you do something, do that with loving kindness. When you think about something, a scenario, anything, you do it with loving kindness. So that's how you're going to practice loving kindness. Don't just limit it to a sitting practice. What about panya? Panya is really interesting because panya has a secular as well as a transcendental, non-secular nature. So when you become a wise person, you are going beyond the knowledge and intelligence. Now, people think when they read a lot of books, when they study, they become wiser. No. Basically, we know application of knowledge at the right time is the normal secular wisdom, right? So even though, you know a lot of things, regardless of how much you know, how many books you have read, in what positions you have grown, it doesn't matter. What matters is that if you can bring the right application of the knowledge into the different specific scenarios, specific situations, and then you are wise. That's at the secular level of wisdom. What about the transcendental, I would say non-secular nature of wisdom? How can you practice the transcendental? There's a deep type of wisdom. That's by practicing anicca, dukkha, anatta perspective in your mentality. So everything is changing. Because of the changes, there is dissatisfaction. Because of dissatisfaction and changes, you can say, I, me, myself. So you kind of like deconstruct you from the event. So you have this mentality. In the Mahayana, we say shunyata, also emptiness. So this is how you practice panya. So be a person of generosity at all times. Be a person of loving kindness all the time. Be a person of wisdom all the time. Don't just limit it to a temple, book, any other thing. You need to understand that rather understanding akusala roots by lobha dosa moha, I urge you to understand this particular discussion by the positive side of these akusala roots, which we call kosala roots, and with a particular action of that of those kusala roots. I would say alobha, for alobha you could practice dana all the time. Adosa you could practice metta or loving kindness. Amoha you could practice panya. So because amoha called wisdom is the starting point. So wisdom is what you need to practice at first, and at the same time you have to keep it continuing consistently. And then dana, which you call alobha and adosa, because those are the two things where people get clash. Some people like someone too much. Some people get sort of like impinge or maybe dislike that particular same person. So likings and dislikings, they are two ends of the problem. And Buddha says, no, you have to be neutral. You need to be neutral, not like you are liking too much or not you are disliking too much. You are neutral. That's the best place to practice Dhamma. So when you are liking too much, when you are disliking too much, you are in two ends. But if you are in the middle, what we call adukka masukha sukha, neutral type of feeling, then you know that I'm not disturbed, I'm not carried away by anything that is lobha, or too much liking, and dosa, too much disliking. So those are two ends of the problem. In short, I would urge you to think about, not just to think about, I would ask you to practice from right now these three to get rid of the person's suffering, which lies in this internal world, the real world, which you call in the Buddhist teachings. So the three ways to eliminate personal suffering that exists inside of you is alobha, adosa, and amoha. So practice non-greed. I would rather say practice dana all the time. Now dana is not just offering food. Dana could come from different ways. Volunteering, sharing your knowledge, even sort of like thinking to help someone. So you are giving your time. There are many ways to think about dana. Even when you are driving on the roads, if you let somebody to pass you, I mean, if someone wants to pass you, some people are not, some drivers don't let those drivers to pass. I mean, if you want to pass, you can go. I mean, you could think about any type of generosity, starting from food or whatever other things. So practice dana at all times. Don't just limit it to an offering to monks and nuns. Try to think about different ways of practicing generosity on the road, at work, at home, when you watch TV, when you watch anything else, when you listen to a conversation of somebody. Try to look at what could be the different ways of being generous. So generosity is a big, larger, broader perspective someone can cultivate. It's not just food offering. And metta is the best mentality we all should cultivate all the time. When you talk to someone, when you think, when you act, do all those actions with loving kindness. Right? Buddha says if someone can practice loving kindness for a split second, the kusala that person generates is far more beyond than all the other kusalas in the Buddhist teaching. Think about. So when you are really being honest to yourself and practicing loving kindness, not with malicious, angry thoughts, not without jealousy and all these thoughts, you are trying to practice loving kindness to everybody unconditionally, boundlessly. That's the best mentality. You could do that. They are free. Now even dana is free. You don't need to always think about buying stuff, right? Sometimes it could be a mentality as well. So what about the moha? I mean, you need to always look into the light, not the darkness. We talked about this light and darkness in another previous discussion. So you need to sort of find out the right application of your knowledge, intelligence into different scenarios, and you can become a wise person. And also you need to find out the real wisdom in the Buddhist teaching. That's called panya, based on anicca, dukkha, anatta. If you can have a perspective of anicca, dukkha, anatta into any scenarios, any circumstance, any situation, then you are a wise person and you will be attaining sotapanna, or you will be attaining nibbana at the end. So in short, you can get rid or eliminate person suffering. Not even that, if you can practice these three, alobha, dosa, moha, that will definitely lead to liberation, nibbana. So then you can understand that how deep, how beneficial, how important, significant is this teaching. So let's try to eliminate alobha, dosa, moha. I would say let's practice alobha, dosa, moha at all times, not giving any chance for akusala roots, alobha, dosa, moha to grow inside, so that we will be able to take care of us. We will be able to eliminate, at least for short time. Maybe at least we are trying to make it habitual. We sort of getting accustomed and sort of getting used to it in the long run. So we know that they are not making a big hassle, big fuss or hassle on our spiritual journey. So I'm wondering if there are any questions. If there are any questions, I could answer now. If not, we will move on to the transference of the merits. Now you know the Buddhist analysis of the world is not the cosmological world outside. It's within you, and that's when you get so much upset. That's why you get so much up. That's why you feel so much worried at some time, because your internal world is broken, right? The Buddha says this is the real world, and we can take care of the real world. We can eliminate the main problems of this internal. I would say the real world. That's I can sometimes say it is internal. I would say this is, because you say internal and external based on the cosmological world. I would say this is the real world. If you understand the real world, you will not let it go in a way so that you will be into suffering, person suffering, dukkha. Okay, I would say that I don't see any questions coming up. So let's share all the good karmas with the departed relatives and the deities. So may all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways be shared by all the departed relatives who passed away in the name of all of us. May they be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Idamme ñāti nang hutu sukita huntu ñāteyo. Idamme ñāti nang hutu sukita huntu ñāteyo. Idamme ñāti nang hutu sukita huntu ñāteyo. We know it's customary and it's a custom for us to share all the good karmas with the devas and the nagas who protect all of us. In the Buddhist teachings, we know that they have enough good karma. It's not clear that how can the humans transfer good karmas to devas, whether they are really having a chance to share all this good karma. But as a custom, we share all the good karma so that their blessings can come towards us. So let's share all the good karmas with the devas and nagas at this point. May all the good karmas be shared by all the devas and nagas. May they be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. At the same time, may they protect all of you far and wide. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ittavata ammehi sambatang punya sampadang. Sabbe deva anumodantu, sabbe bhuta anumodantu, sabbe satta anumodantu, sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasattha ch bhummattha deva naga mahindika, punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanang, chirang rakhantu desanang, chirang rakhantu mam parante. Finally, let's make a great wish. We do this wish all the time. Because this wish will come true only when we apply our Dhamma knowledge. So don't just leave your Dhamma knowledge just as a knowledge, just as an intellectual discussion in our place. Please apply it right now and your time afterwards. So may all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways be helpful for all of us to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm going to bless all of you with a couple more stanzas. Please receive the blessings. Abhivadana sirisa nichang vadha pachayino chattaro dhamma vadhanti ayuvanu sukhang balang Ayurarogya sampatti sangha sampatti mevacha ato nibbana sampatti iminate saminjatu. Before we close, I would like to invite you all to stay tuned with us on Wednesday on Paṭisota YouTube channel, because this is Paṭisota Facebook page for the Dhamma Pariyesana discussion day 5 on what is wisdom and how to gain wisdom. So it would be a pretty interesting topic wherein which Professor Karivasam and myself will be discussing. Thank you. Have a good night. Also, take care. Stay safe. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.